Introducing
Pablo de Steven Pardunier
in Stalin's Foreign Policy. Soviet Russia was created by the Bolsheviks, and in particular by a revolutionary character, Lenin. Lenin's foreign policy was in hands of Leon Trotsky, but 2 years later, Chicherin substituted him. Chicherin had another plans than Trotsky and developed a strategy called divide and conquer. It consisted of divide the people and slowly conquering. This man also maintained a peaceful coexistence with the Western countries, afraid these would turn against Russia.
By this time, Russia was still in World War I, and Chicherin had to make a deal with Germany to claim peace. Russia lost 1/3 of its population, 1/4 of its land, and last but not least, its prestige. Also, the foreign help, or the simple fact of being from outside of Russia, was seen horribly since the Bolsheviks said that the whites during the Civil War were terrorists, and foreign help from France or England.
Shortly after World War I, Lenin founded the Comintern to export the revolution out to Europe, and with the mentality to liberate all Asian countries from the capitalist greed. He also thought that Germany was the key country to make the socialist revolution. Russia later invaded Baku, capital of Azerbaijan, so its immense oil fields would be a great source of materials for Russia during its industrialization.
This was all continued with the Russo-Polish War, that was caused by some large portions of Ukraine acquired by the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, signed by Germany and Russia. The portions of land wanted were acquired, but the so-called Red Bridge, that was supposed to export the revolutionary ideas to Europe, was broken. Lenin, shortly after all this, realized that the Soviet Union wasn't enough strong to pursue the true revolutionary foreign policy.
After Lenin's death, two political ideologies were born. Both of them were communist ideologies, but never the same. The defenders of these two new ideologies were Trotsky and Stalin. Even though these ideologies were socialist, the way that these two political leaders proposed them were very different. Stalin wanted socialism in one country. He thought that communism had to be very strong in Russia while isolated from other countries. He didn't want any friends outside Russia, while Trotsky thought that communism was also very important in Russia, but with the help from other communist countries outside from Russia.
This documentary will go through the three stages of Stalin's foreign policy until 1941. These stages will be marked by years, as the first to come up is from 1928 to 1932, where Stalin closed all contact with all non-communist parties. The second stage would go from 1932 to 1939, where Stalin finally opens up to the world and starts attacking with foreign countries to protect himself from a possible war in Europe. Last but not least, the last stage would be the prelude for World War II, where Stalin lasts his efforts on foreign decisions.
Stalin was a man of a single cult, himself. He didn't believe in any other theory but his, and that was followed by his mentality of socialism in one country. Stalin only had diplomatic relationships outside Russia with the members of the Comintern, which was an international congress of all communist parties around the world.
His cold heart didn't allow any diplomatic talks or agreements between any party and the communists. All socialist groups were ignored and considered as social fascists. This term was said by Stalin himself in reference to the socialist parties and accused them of being as bad as any other right-wing party. Only the Communist Party was the true left wing. Stalin's pronunciation faded like a bomb to the Socialist Party members all around the world, till the point that German left wing split up right when Adolf Hitler was going through his rise of power. The rest of communist foreigners had to pledge total obedience to the Soviet Union in order to be affiliated.
Later on, a new treaty called the Kellogg-Briand Pact was signed between 8 different countries that included Germany, France, United Kingdom, and United States of America, that said that all foreign affairs would be solved through diplomatic strategies and the use of war was abolished. This new pact was one of the first modern non-aggression pacts in Europe. Various clauses on the pact were used to create the UN, but the Kellogg-Briand Pact was never respected.
During this time of Russian industrialization, Western countries were going through a Great Depression, which made countries like the US feel vulnerable to communism. Stalin saw this as an opportunity to expand revolutionary ideas and was very strict with left-wing parties, but never created alliances in right-wing parties such as Germany.
Stalin's foreign policy during the second stage was continuously interrupted by the constant affairs in Europe, causing him an imminent war and making Stalin create a collective security towards Russia. Nazi Germany started his own plan led by Hitler himself, and as the fascism grew exponentially in Germany, Stalin started to feel Hitler's breath on his neck and attempted to renew the peace pact with Germany, also known as the Treaty of Rapallo. The next years until World War II are marked by the continuous attempts of Stalin to create collective security around him. The collective security was a plan for the Soviet Union that after many years ignoring the Western countries, it opened its borders and joined the League of Nations, together with France, England, the US, and etc. This new pact worsens and intensifies the relationship with Germany and makes the German danger more obvious than before. The joining of the League also had other meanings, such as the turn of policy in Stalin's foreign affairs, since it was the first time Russia had an agreement with non-communist countries. This turn in Stalin's policy did not fool most of the Western countries, so he knew something had to be done to prove himself.
Stalin had to move quickly if he didn't want to be betrayed by the fascists, so the signing of a new democratic constitution opened up to the Soviet Union's doors to the Allies, even though the constitution really wasn't as democratic. Stalin presented it since one of the main points in there was that he didn't have a limit of power. This new Soviet constitution of 1936 repealed the restrictions of voting and universal direct suffrage was added. It also gave the rights to work, social health care, rest and leisure, education, housing, etc. With this constitution, Stalin recognized the social and economic rights. This constitution paid off its purpose, and Stalin was able to start cooperating with the Western parties. Meanwhile, far from the Soviet border, fascism rises as Spain enters a cruel Spanish civil war, where Hitler and Stalin support different sides. The Spanish Civil War is the perfect war for Hitler to test his new weapons for the incoming World War II. As Spain was sunken in the sea of turmoil, Mussolini, Italian fascist dictator, spreads his influence and starts a campaign in Ethiopia. As this war was still in action, Hitler started the occupation of Greenland, while violating the Treaty of Versailles signed after World War I.
Diplomatic talks were going as expected for Stalin, but then Stalin's supposed European friends, France and United Kingdom, convoked a meeting where all European powers were invited but Stalin. This meeting was known as the Munich Conference. The Munich Conference ended up in the Munich Agreement, which was a settlement that permitted German annexation of the Sudetenland to Czechoslovakia. To Stalin, this decision was a disrespectful act and meant to him that he had no longer their support, so he decided to move on. Hitler at this time ended the invasion of the Promised Land, also called the Sudetenland, where he repeatedly mentions inappropriacy of the German. While this occurred, Germany, Italy, and Japan signed a pact that consolidated them as the Axis powers and made Russia fear a possible two-front war, as all progress done with Japan and Germany seemed to vanish in a matter of seconds. At this point, people knew a war was rising as Germany ended its Czech invasion and was proved to Europe that Hitler's word was anything but loyal.
The third stage of Stalin's foreign policy was the prelude and beginning of World War II. As the cautiousness of the world leaders increased, Germany had a pact with fascist countries to protect between each other. Russia felt that didn't have enough respect from the rest of Europe, what made that Stalin start the pact with Hitler, which consisted in a peace between them. The world was really impressed to hear that both countries were having an agreement since before they were enemies.
This pact was signed by foreign ministers Ribbentrop and Molotov and consisted in 10 years without aggression. This pact also included the conquer of Poland and the division of it between the two countries. This pact was against Stalin's beliefs, since he believed in a collective security that was based on alliances between democratic countries. One of the reasons that Stalin made this pact was that since he destroyed all his army, he needed new generals. The result of this Nazi-Soviet pact was really good since the agreement was carried out and it was said Germany invaded Poland in September 1 of 1939 and the Soviet Union followed them by taking the rest of the territories. They gained again basically most of the territory they had lost and was gained again by 1941. With this, we end the third and last stage of Stalin's foreign policy before the Great War. It killed over 80 million people around the world and left a big wound that had to be healed.